So we're starting here in line 747, and we can start with Ascanium, which is Ascanius, that's Aeneas' son, and then Que, meaning and Anchisein, which is Anchises, that's Aeneas' father. It's a slightly odd ending, the en. That's because it's a Greek accusative form. And just notice both of these nouns are accusative. So they are the subject of something, and we'll see what they are the subject. Sorry, they are the object of something, and we'll see what they are the object of in a moment. Also, going with Anchisein is this word patrem. So Anchises, Ascanius and my father Anchises. And then there's a third thing in this list because we get que again. And the third thing is the adjective teucros, which means Teucrian or Trojan, and that agrees with penatis. And this is one of those times when it's not dative or ablative plural, because that would be penatibus. It is in fact accusative plural, equivalent to penates in prose. So, Ascanius and my father Anchises and the Teucrian household gods, and then we get the main verb commendo, which means I commend or entrust. Right? So, in other words, I entrust Ascanius and my father Anchises and the Teucrian household gods to, and here's where you get your dative plural noun, to Sociis, my companions. And then another main verb, recondo, I hide them. So the object of recondo is the same as the object of commendo, and that is the whole of the previous line. I hide them in, now we have an ablative phrase and we have to imagine the word in before it, right? In a curva valle. Curva meaning curved, or perhaps winding in this context, and then valle, just like in English, valley. So just to go back over that couple of lines again. So Ascanius and my father Anchises and the Teucrian household gods I entrust to my companions and hide in a winding valley. Okay, then ipse at the beginning of the next line, that means I myself. So now we find out what Aeneas is going to do. I myself repeto, seek again, in other words, return to, and the object is urbem, accusative singular, the city. So I myself seek again the city, et kingor, and am clothed with, or you could just say I clothe myself or gird myself. It's a kind of reflexive use of the passive, if you like. So I gird myself with fulgentibus armis, ablative case. You can see fulgentibus is a present participle from the nt in the middle. And so that's ablative, present participle, and the noun is armis. So I gird myself with glittering arms or weapons. So just to go through that line again, I myself seek again the city and gird myself with glittering arms. Then in the next line, you start with stat, and stat is an impersonal verb. That means, so literally it means something like it stands or it is decided. But really, the decision has been made by Aeneas. So Latin does this with an impersonal verb. In English, we would do it with a verb that has Aeneas as the subject. So it means basically, I am resolved, I have decided to, and then you get an infinitive, renovare, to renew or repeat. And then the object is omnis, which is a poetic version of omnes, and agreeing, and that is agreeing with casus, which means risks in this instance. So I am resolved to repeat all risks, and que, to turn back, reverti, that looks like a present passive infinitive, but the verb is deponent, so it has an active meaning. To turn back, per, through, plus accusative, omnem Troiam, all Troy. So again, I am resolved to repeat all risks and to turn back through all Troy. et rursus, and again to objectare, to expose. And the object of that is caput, my head, or more metaphorically, my life, to, and then you've got a dative plural, pericles, to dangers. Sometimes the word periclum has a U in the middle, periculum, and sometimes it doesn't. So, in other words, Aeneas, even though they've just escaped from Troy, he's going to go back into Troy so that he can search for his lost wife, Creusa, who has disappeared somewhere along the way. So I'll just go back to stat there. So I am resolved to repeat all risks and to turn back through all Troy, and again to expose my life to dangers. Right, now line 752 here, principio, ablative case, imagine the word in before it, means in the beginning, right? So this is the first thing that he does, in the beginning. And then the main verb is in the next line, repeto, which so I seek again. And the object is muros, the walls, accusative plural, and que. And then there's another object, which is obscura, meaning dark, and limina, meaning thresholds. So I seek again the walls and dark thresholds of the gate, portae, feminine genitive singular, of the gate, by which, so qua is ablative case, by which I had, and now here we have a pluperfect tense verb, brought out my step, gressum. In other words, by which I had departed. Okay, so that's one thing he does. And I then sequor, I follow, deponent verb. Retro means back, right? So I follow back my. Now, literally, the object is observata vestigia. Observata is a PPP, having been observed, and vestigia is footsteps. So literally, I follow back my having been observed footsteps. In other words, I follow back my retraced steps. That's what he's doing. He's retracing his steps. So I follow back my retraced steps per noctem, through the night, per plus accusative, and I survey them, lustro, I look at them closely, lumine, with my eye. So lumine is ablative case, with my eye. Remember, the normal Latin word for an eye is oculus, but you can also use lumen, which means light. And that kind of reflects an ancient belief that our eyes are like torches, right? They give out light in order to see things, which is not in fact true. That's not how the eyes actually work, but that was an ancient belief about eyes. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to principio. So in the beginning, I seek again, repeto, the walls, muros, and the dark thresholds, obscura que limina, of the gate, portae, by which, qua, I had departed, extuleram gressum, literally brought out my sort of path, my course, and I follow back, sequor retro, my retraced steps, observata vestigia, through the night, per noctem, and I survey them, et lustro, with my eye, lumine. Okay, then we have a colon, and then we have a new line, and the subject in the new line, 755, is horror, meaning dread, and then ubique means everywhere. So the Latin is quite compressed here. Literally, horror or dread everywhere for my mind. So animo is dative case, for my mind. In English, we might unpack that a bit more. So we might say dread everywhere fills my mind. And then simul here at the same time, or likewise, the ipsa silentia, the silences themselves. I would probably translate silences as singular, just silence. I think that makes more sense in English. And as you know, the boundary in poetry between singular and plural is not a very clear one in Latin. Um, so ipsa silentia, the silence itself, or you could say the very silence. So likewise, the very silence terrifies. Okay, new sentence. Inde, then. And then the main verb is refero me. I bring back myself. In other words, I return. And then domum means home, right? I return home. Si forte, if by chance, or in case by chance, and that phrase is repeated, si forte, if by chance, tulisset, she had brought, and here we assume the subject is she, referring to Creusa. If by chance she had brought her foot, pedem, or in English we might say her steps, there, right? So in other words, he's going back to his house in case Creusa has ended up there. That's the point. So just to go back to, in fact, no, I'll just do the rest of the sentence here. Danai is the subject after the colon. Danai means the Danaans or the Greeks, the Danaans, and then the main verb in ruerant is pluperfect tense. The Danaans had rushed in. Et and were holding tenebant. You can recognize the imperfect tense from the BA. Were holding omne tectum, the whole house. Literally the whole roof, but here I think roof is being used to refer to the house as a whole. So just to go back through that sentence from inde, then I return home. If by chance she had brought her steps there, the Danaans had rushed in and were holding the whole house. So basically what's happening is Aeneas is going back to his house to see if his wife Creusa has ended up there, and what he finds, unsurprisingly, is that the house has been taken over by the Greeks. Okay, next sentence, iliket means immediately. So just like statim, for example, immediately. And then the subject is edax ignis. Edax means devouring, and ignis is fire. So immediately the devouring fire. And then the verb, the main verb, is passive. Volvitur could be spelled with a V in the middle or with a U, doesn't matter. Volvitur means is rolled, like the word revolve in English, or evolve, or devolve, or whatever. Is rolled, and then wento is ablative case, by the wind. So immediately the devouring fire is rolled by the wind. Ad plus accusative, meaning towards, and then the accusative is summa fastigia, the highest pediments. So again, immediately the devouring fire is rolled by the wind towards the highest pediments. So basically, the Greeks have set fire to the house, they're torching all these Trojan houses, and the wind is sort of whipping up the flames so that they're climbing up to the roof. Okay, next phrase, ex superant flammae. So the subject is the flammae, the flames, and then ex superant means tower above, just like with the snakes earlier in our text. So the flames tower above. And then new subject, aistus, the blast, the heat. Furit, rages. Ad auras, towards the breezes. Ad plus accusative. In English, we might just say towards the sky. So again, just to go back from iliket, immediately the devouring fire is rolled by the wind towards the highest pediments. The flames tower above, the blast rages towards the sky. Okay. Now, next sentence, line 760. And what we have here, so we start with our main verb, procado, and procado means I proceed, I go on. And then we have et, and then we have another main verb, which is reviso. Okay, so I go on and I revisit, and then the object of that is sedes, the home, grammatically plural, but let's treat it as singular. I revisit the home of Priam. So Priami is genitive. Que means and And then archem is another object, another accusative object of rewiso, and it means the citadel. Remember, citadel means the kind of highest and most defended bit of a city. Okay, so I go on and I revisit Priam's home and the citadel. Colon. Et yam, and now. And then we have to imagine the word in, because we've got an ablative phrase, so we imagine in plus ablative. Porticibus vacuis. Vacuis means empty, and porticibus are colonnades or porticos. So, and now in the empty colonnades, in, and again we have an ablative which means in here, in asilo. Now this asilo is the sanctuary, which gives us the word asylum in English, and then eunonis, genitive, means of Juno, right? So, and now in the empty colonnades, in Juno's sanctuary, and then we're just going to go up to the end of this sentence. Lecti means having been chosen. It's the PPP, perfect passive participle, from lego, which means I read or I choose. Okay, so having been chosen, and it is agreeing with custodes, meaning guards. So I would translate these two words as chosen guards. And then we find out who they are. One is phoenix in Latin, et meaning and then dirus ulixes. Dirus meaning dread or terrible, ulixes meaning Ulysses, also known to the Greeks as Odysseus. So chosen guards, phoenix and dread Ulysses, and then the main verb is ad servabant, were watching or guarding, and you've got that BA in the middle that tells us it's imperfect tense, were watching, and the object of that is pridam, accusative singular, meaning the spoil or the loot. Okay, so I'll just go through that bit again. I'll go back to Procado actually, up to ad servabant, and then finish. So I go on and revisit Priam's home and the citadel, and now in the empty colonnades in Juno's sanctuary, chosen guards, Phoenix and dread Ulysses, were watching the spoil.